Alright, good morning. I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply, and today we're going to continue the building of the Lewis and Clark backpack. Lewis and Clark Explorer's backpack. So in the previous video we got to the point that we sewed the back part to the gusset. There it is right there. Now, the first thing I'm going to do today is to sew the front part to the gusset as well, so that we would then have the entire shape of a bag. So just like how I did the back part, I'm going to find the center point of the front. Let me bring the camera down to the desk here. Groovy. More. All right. So I'm going to bring the, I'm going to find the center point of the front, and I've already got the center point of the gusset marked on here. So I'll start clipping right there, and I'll go all the way up, and it should line up perfectly just like the back did. If it doesn't, you may want to look at what, where there's an issue, because everything was cut to the same measurements. So if it doesn't line up, I mean, within 1/8 of an inch, again, there may be some sort of issue. So let me grab my centering ruler here. Find my center point on the front, and I'll just use a little anything to scratch that little line right there. Okay, and just like I did on the back, I'm going to flip this thing over and I'm going to start clipping it together right here in the middle. Okay, there's my center line on my gusset piece, my center line on this. I'll put those two together, give them a clip. All right. Now I'm going to work my way around from here up this way and then back up this way, and then I'm going to sew it all together just like I did on the back. So we're going to save some recording time, and I'll just go ahead and do that off camera. And when I come back, we'll do the really fun part, which is now turning this thing right side out. All right, so got the front sewn on. Right there, the back was already sewn on. There it is right there. Now we got a big old inside out block, okay? We got to make it right side out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach in there and I'm going to unclip that pocket, and that will definitely help in trying to turn it right side out, okay? It's not an easy one to turn right side out because the gussets are kind of narrow, but you can do it. Okay, there's no real secret or trick to it. I try to go in there and push one corner out. The biggest thing I can tell you is I don't like to put a lot of stress on the tops of your stitches up here. You don't want to rip leather or pull stitches out or anything. So I do try to be careful with that. This bag has a lot of pull-up, this leather does. So it's going to do a lot to stress that leather, and it's going to look pretty cool, I think, once we get it turned right side out. So anyway, I'm going to start this process. Sometimes I can do it fairly quickly, sometimes it takes a while, but here we go. Now, like I said, I don't stress that top very much, so I try to support it while I'm turning it back like that, okay? And once you get to the halfway point, like the rest of it's gravy, you know? But it's getting to that point that is a pain. Alright, so we've got started to peel it back up there. We've got one corner about ready to come out, but we need to start pushing the other corner in. Otherwise, we'll just never make it work. Like I said, look at the, this thing started out that dark. Oh, sorry. And then now it's, yeah, got a lot of pull up to it. So it's going to turn quite a bit. Let me angle the camera a little bit more down there so you can see where I'm at. It's not a fast process, and I've learned that if I try to rush it, then I end up hurting something. Either me or the bag. I used to make a lot of tooled leather footballs, and this reason right here is why I don't make them anymore. They were such a pain to turn inside or right side out once you sewed them together. It turns out I'd damage more than I'd successfully get, and so it just really wasn't worth all the time I'd put into them if they weren't going to successfully turn. Maybe now that I'm a more experienced leather worker, I'll revisit it one day and see if there's a better something I can do, but at that time it was just smarter not to make them anymore. All right, so there it is. I'm gonna push my corners out here. I am loving the patina that put on this leather now that it's had a lot of stress put to it. Okay, so look, this area here doesn't even match the rest of the bag anymore because it hadn't had that stress. So I'm just gonna wrinkle it up a little bit, make it match. Push some fingers into it, you know. Do what you got to do. There we are. All right, so the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to make the liner. So what I'm going to do is take my pattern that I used to cut out the front and the back, and I'm going to cut them out of fabric, and then I'm going to cut a gusset. If your fabric is big enough, just measure your gusset all the way around here and cut one continuous gusset. So when I come back, those pieces will be cut out, and then we're going to just sew them together on a machine. The other measurement I have to make is I have to measure basically the inside, what is that, circumference of the bag, because I need to cut another piece that's about 3 inches wide and that length. Okay, so just a second, I'll just show you how I do that, I guess. Find my tape. I'm sure there's a more scientific method of doing this, but what I do is use my little clips and just clip my tape around. If I remember right, the last one of these I made was somewhere between 32 and 33 inches around. It can be made up of multiple pieces if you don't have a piece that big left over. And again, this is all part of lining the bag. You don't have to do it. You could just roll this edge over and sew your lid to your flap to that back part there and say, hey, we're almost done here. But if you want to line it, then that's what we're doing here. The type of liner we're going to make is called a drop-in liner, which basically means we're going to make a bag out of fabric and drop it in to the bag out of leather. Almost done. All right, we are pretty much just under 30 inches here. We're looking at 29 3/4 inches as the circumference there. No problem. I will cut a piece of leather that is 29 3/4 inches by 3 inches. Or if I have to make up multiples, then I'll cut a really long piece and join it together and then trim it down to 29 by 3. When I come back, we'll have those pieces cut and we'll talk about what to do with them. All right, folks, got my pieces cut out. So this is my lining material. I got it at Joann's a long time ago, and I absolutely love this fabric. I don't know why. It's got little gold sparkle in it, and it's got all kinds of different browns, so it goes with just about everything I make. And then the green is nice too, so it works out. Sorry about the dogs, they're fighting over a chew toy. And then I cut me a piece that was 23 inches and then, 3 inches wide. And then I'd said 29 1/4, but I forgot we need a seam allowance on there too. So I went ahead and cut it out to 30 1/2. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna skive one of the long sides and both of the short sides, because the short sides will sew together right like that on the skive. And then I have to fold the little flaps back so that I can sew it all into the bag once the liner's on it. On the liner itself, I didn't want to waste material by cutting a big long strip of this to do that entire gusset. So I made it into 2 gussets, and all I'm going to do is just stitch them together at the bottom here. Okay, and then as I stick them to the front and the back and sew all that together, I'll just trim off the tops of them once I'm done, because it doesn't really matter. We're not going to do any fancy seam work or anything on these. It'll be kind of hidden behind this and inside the layers of the bag. And I'll show you what all that means in a minute. But off camera, I'm going to skive that one long edge, these 2 short edges, and I'm going to just sew those 2 little pieces together on one end so that I can make a continuous gusset out of them. Okay? So I got this part sewn together, so now those two have made one big long gusset that is longer than I need it to be, and that's fine. And then I skived the three sides of this, the two short sides and the one long side. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is take my double-sided tape. Now if I were a fabric person, I would have pins and I would stick my fabric together with pins, but I am not a fabric person, I'm a leather person, so I do what I know how to do, and I use double-sided tape to stick my fabrics together. Okay, now I'm not quite as worried about my liner as I am my bag, so I'm just going to kind of guesstimate where the center is here on the bottom of this, and I'm going to start taping this to that, and just like putting the pieces of leather together, I'll tape it all the way around and all the way up the sides here. Okay, and then I'll sew it together, and then I'll do the exact same thing with the back side here, or the front side, doesn't matter, this is ambidextrous at this point. If you want to add other pockets or anything like that, you would do that now. Like the one I did a sample of, I put an extra pocket in here, and I lined the top of it with leather so it would be more rigid, and it would be, you know, a paper pocket or something for the back part of the bag, or a computer pocket, something like that. For this one, I'm not as worried about that, but to do that, it would literally just be another layer that was shorter than this layer. And then again, I wrapped the top of it with leather and sewed to it just to give it some rigidity so it wasn't just floppy fabric down inside my bag. When I sew this together, I'm using the same sewing machine that I use for all my leather stuff. I do have a very nice, what I call a home machine that does fabric and stuff like that, but I just don't have the place to get it out of the bag and set it up, and it takes a lot of time, and I'm just going to sew this on the same machine that I sew everything else on. My class 18, not even changing the thread out. It's a little bulky, but it's all hidden in the seams. If I was doing any top stitching or anything like that, I would care enough to get the other one out, but I'm not, so I don't. Alright, so that's what I'm going to be doing next, is just taping this one together around the edges. Okay, going both ways here, and then sewing it together, and then I'll sew the other side to it, and then once that's all done, we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I sewed up my little bag, I guess you could say. Okay, and I want to drop it into my backpack just for a test fitting, I guess you could say. And what I want to make sure is that it fits nicely in there. It doesn't look all wadded up and stuff like that. And honestly, this one does look a tiny bit wadded. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the sewing machine and just sew another seam just on the inside of the original seam. And that'll tighten it up, make it a little bit smaller. Because remember, we made this one out of the same pattern as we made this one. And it should be slightly smaller because it's got to fit inside of it, right? Now, the other thing I did, we had some customers in the store, so I couldn't turn on the video before I did it. But I sewed the two ends of this 3-inch piece together, okay? And I need to check it for fit too, and make sure it fits basically just tightly right along the inside of the bag. And it does well with it, so I'm happy with it. I can kind of pull it apart a little bit to get it to fit just perfectly. But in a later step, what we're going to do is we'll roll the edge of this down and the edge of this down, and then those will be sewn together, and you'll have a nice finished edge, and it'll all be stitched together. Okay, so the next thing I need to do is just go, and again, I'm going to re-sew just on the inside of this current seam. I'm going to sew another seam, both front and back, and make this thing a little bit smaller so it fits better inside the bag. Alright, so got that where you can kind of see down into the bag there. I re-sewed all the seams on this so that it's a little bit smaller and tighter. So it fits down in there a little bit nicer, and it's not all wadded up. I mean, it is kind of right this second, but it won't be once I form it to the bag and everything, you know, just pushing around on the corners and getting it in there like it ought to be. So, we have this piece right here, and we have this piece right here. And I have silly dogs that are going to argue now. Babies, hush. Hopefully they won't continue. There's 6,000 chew toys around this room, and they always want to argue over one. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, with the seam kind of in the center of one of the sides on this, I'm just going to pull this liner all the way up to the top of this thing, basically putting it inside the liner, okay? Okay, and I'm going to keep it even with the top of the liner. And again, I want to center that seam kind of in between two corners there. There we go. So when I sew it onto the bag a little bit, that seam will be right there in the very back of the bag, right in the center, okay? And I'm going to clip it on. You could use double-sided tape, but I've explained several times throughout this video series that tape doesn't work too well on my bag that I'm making here. But I want to clip this right even with the fold over, or the top of the leather, okay? But when I sew it, I'm actually going to sew it at the bottom of the leather. All right, I'm going to put it in my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew along that bottom right there. Okay, this seam right here, I folded this part of it, the overlap, back, and I'll sew that down like that, and it'll lay nice and flat. But anyway, I'm going to sew it way down here at the bottom, and then I'm just going to I can either cut off or kind of roll down the very top part here. But remember, this is just as tall as the bag, so if I don't account for that 3 inches right there, then the bottom of this would be wadded up in the bottom of the bag. So I go ahead and, I mean, you could save some material and cut it 3 inches smaller and all that, but I've already got my patterns laid out for the whole thing, so why not just adjust fire as I go. I'm kind of a shoot from the hip kind of guy sometimes, I guess. So I realize that some people that probably design and do custom, you know, clothing and stuff like that for a living probably look at my stuff and are like, what in the hell is this guy doing? I'm doing what it takes. That's what I'm doing. Alright, so I'm going to go over to the sewing machine, okay, and very simply I'll fold that over like that just so that I can get to this, and I'm going to sew along just that bottom line right there, and I'm going to roll this thing through while I do, okay? As a matter of fact, I'll take you with me. We'll move this tripod over there, and you can watch me sew it up. Alright, I'm going to zoom you in a little bit so you can kind of see where my needle's at on my sewing machine. Move that light back some so it's not as crazy on the lighting. Alright, get my hands out of your way. Now I'm just going to use my presser foot as my guide to keep that on the bottom of the leather, and I'm just going to do a circle around. And I'll keep my project rotating as I go so I don't get anything hung up or wrinkled underneath. Nothing worse than pulling a project out and realizing that you sewed the bottom up to the top because it was folded underneath or something. Okay, so like I said, I'll rotate it some so I can keep a straight line going here. Try to always stop my machine with the needle down, that way it holds its place and nothing gets moved as far as that needle's concerned. I know my bobbin was getting empty a while ago, so I'm trying to make sure I've got enough bobbin to stretch this piece. Nothing worse than sewing along for a couple of minutes and then realizing your bobbin ran out 1,000 stitches ago. Ask me how I know. Alright, so there's that back seam we just sewed across it. Alright, we're almost back to the beginning. Hopefully our bobbin hangs on for us. Back to the beginning. I'll set it back into its first stitch, do a couple of stitches to, oh, fell right into that stitch, good job. Do a couple of extra stitches here to tie it off or whatever, overstitch, and now we'll pull it out. So there it is. It is now sewn. It's like a little wastebasket with a leather top. When I come back, we'll be at back at the table, and I'll show you what we're doing next. All right, so here's what we're looking at. I took all the clips off. Now you can just fold this thing down. You can cut off that excess. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. You're done with it. Okay, you just want it out of your way and out of your seam. Okay, because you're going to tape this leather into the top of your bag. So we're going to bring our bag back. I'm going to put my liner in it. I'm going to put the back of that seam kind of in the back of the bag there. All right. Now the next thing I need to do is I'm going to roll these seams down. I'm going to roll down the seam of the edge of the bag, and I'm going to roll down the edge of the liner. I'll butt those two up against each other, and I'll clip them together, and then I'm going to stitch them. Stitch the heck out of them. All right, but there's more to it than that. We have to also put the lid on the bag. Okay, get down here so I'm away from the camera a little bit. The lid is going to perfectly fit between the back seams there. And what I do is I sandwich it in between the liner layer and the bag layer. If you did not line your bag, if you chose not to line it, that's fine. Just stick it in there just on the inside of just the bag layer and stitch them together. All right. Now, I've explained 100 times that tape doesn't work too well on this. So I'm going to painstakingly roll all these edges and kind of clip them all together and pray that it holds. Okay, and to simplify things, I'm going to do the I'm going to do 3 sides. Basically, I'll do the gusset on each side and go all the way across the front. So I'll go from the back of one gusset to the back of the other gusset. And then I'll come back and worry about everything to do with the lid, because it's too much for me to hold together when I can't have it stuck. It's when it won't stick with tape or glue or anything like that. Okay, so I don't really think you want to sit here and watch me wrestle all these seams and folding. So I'm going to do it off camera, and when I come back, we're going to be back at the sewing machine, and I'll show you how I stitch these. Alright folks, here we are. So we got this all clipped together, and see how that makes a nice little double rolled seam right there? That's what we're going to sew together, okay? Now I'm going to break one of my cardinal rules. I always have like the finished or the outside of a project on top when I'm sewing on a sewing machine. But in this particular application, while I could work it through there, or even better, if I was using the cylinder arm machine, I could just set it up on the cylinder arm and go around it. I'm doing it on a flatbed. I don't like using more than one machine in a video because I don't want people to think, oh God, you know, not only do I need a sewing machine, I need 2 sewing machines. Not the case. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to sew this together, and that's simply going to be to stick it in here this way. And so basically from the inside out as I go around the bag. All right, and the bag's not really tall enough to consume the entire side of the sewing machine. So I'm gonna have to kind of fold down parts of it as I go around other parts of it. Okay, so I'm gonna do it. If I don't talk a lot, it's because I have to concentrate a lot. If I do talk a lot, then it's easier than I thought it would be. Again, when this is all stuck together and I'm not using clips, it is easier. But guess what? So, and also again, I'm not going all the way around. The back is going to stay unstitched until I can get the rest of this done, and then I'll come back and stitch the back in with the lid, the flap. Okay, hang on, I've already got this trying to separate under here. Took the clip off too early, I think. Go. I love this leather, but dadgum. All right, so here we go. I can backstitch it. I didn't grab my thread. This is just going to be one hell of a cluster here, guys. It happens. Welcome to my world. I promise things are not as easy as people make them look sometimes. And I don't want to sew too close to the edge, but if I get too far from the edge, then I'm not going to catch that fold over, and my seam will come, you know, like the insides of it will wrap out and look like crap. So, now that you've got all that in mind, good luck sewing your bag. Alright, I'm going to do a little bit of actually no, I'm not going to backstitch. I'm just going to go forward. I'll catch and go the other way with my other stitch when I do the back on it, and that'll lock that in. So I'm going to go super slow so that I can rotate the bag as I go. I did not change my bobbin, and I guarantee you this is not going to make it. So I'm going to have to really watch my bobbin here, guys. I'm going to try to leave these clips on as long as I can until they get right up under the feed mechanism here. Zoom in a little bit for you here, but at the same time I don't want it so much that you're just staring at the freckles on my hand or something. About halfway there. Hadn't run out of bobbin yet. I'm sure it'll wait until my last two stitches and then do it. That's kind of the way the cookie crumbles on that. Again, I'm only going to go to this other back gusset here, and that's where I'll stop because I still need to put the lid, the flap in it. And that's going to be fun too, considering it doesn't, I can't clip it in and I can't stick it in, so we'll see how that works out, folks. Can't believe this bobbin has lasted this long. I hope I don't eat those words in a minute. Sometimes when you get to the seams, where the seam goes down the side of the bag, it can be hard to get your sewing machine to crawl up over that, depending on what kind of machine you're using. So like there, I just had to kind of force it under to make sure it got where it was going. Now this clip right here straddles the seam I want to stop at, so I'm just going to stop short of that clip and call it good to go get my lid. Okay, pull that clip, complete that stitch. Alright, part of the pucker factor is over, but part of it's just beginning. So, I would love to not move the camera again and just do all of this right here, but I want the desk to lay this on so that I can put my lid, my flap on it, excuse me, and stick it in as good as I did, or need to. But while I'm thinking on it, I'm going to go ahead and change out my bobbin so that we don't have that catastrophe. Okay, let's see how close we got. Actually, it looks like we were kind of safe. We've got about 3.5 feet of thread. We actually could have made that entire seam all the way around. Sometimes it's a gamble, folks, and I don't like to gamble with leather. I don't mind doing it with money. How screwed up are my priorities? Alright, so when I come back, we'll be at the table and I'll put in the flap. Alright folks, so it's time to put the lid on. I keep calling it the lid, the flap. The big cover area thingy, majig. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm measuring, what was that, a ½ inch into it, okay? And I'm going to mark a little line with my scratch awl, okay? And I'm going to flip it over. And I'm going to measure a ½ inch. And I'm going to mark a little line with my scratch awl. Why are you doing this, Aaron? You might ask. Well, what we need to do is put it in between these two layers of leather, which means I need to line it up with this side and I need to line it up with that side, and I can't see the two sides when the flap is in between them. So if I have me a little guideline, then I know where it's at, theoretically. It never actually works out for me. I'm sure people that are better sewers than I am don't have as much of an issue, but I have an issue. Again, I'm going to attempt to use some tape on this. It's not going to work great, but it's going to work better than not using any tape at all. Okay? I do not want to put the tape up against the little line I marked, due to the fact that you know, then you'll see it once the thing is sewn together. You don't want to see the shiny. We always talk about this. Okay? Shiny is bad. Shiny is unprofessional. Okay. Let's see if I can get the backing off this dang tape. Actually, I'd better go ahead and put a piece on the back side. Then do it. Now this will be a little bit better because right here the tape will stick. That's awesome. It's a different leather. Alright, so I got it off that side. I'll flip the bag over here, and I just want to put this sucker in all the way to that line, corner to corner. It should fit just right. If it doesn't fit just right, make it enough. Okay. I'll just line it up between those, and then I've got big clips, okay? And I'll put a big clip on there to try to hold it, hopefully, inshallah, as the Arabs say. Didn't work out. Big clip not going on. Now, theoretically, I only need to stick one side, because if this side's good, I'm going to be able to see the other side while I'm sewing. Alright? So let me press this sucker on here as best I can. And then I'm going to carefully grab it and flip it over. And then one of the problems I have is that handle that we put in there earlier. It's going to keep it from laying completely flat. Alright? So I'm going to get a little bit creative here. I'm going to grab this cutting board over here. And this cutting board right here. And try to lay it a little bit flatter on it. Okay? So there we go. Line this up with that line that we drew, okay, because it was trying to be a ½ an inch higher than that line. Get the paper off the tape. Almost to it. Okay, now I put a ½ an inch seam allowance in here, which means I need to sew it about ¼ of an inch from the top, just like I did the rest of this, okay? Now, I am not going to sew this on camera, but I'm going to do it exactly like this. Okay, the reason I'm not going to do it on camera is because I'm going to have my hands all up on this, and you won't be able to see it regardless. But I'm going to do it just like this. I'm going to lay it flat, then I'm going to run it from where my stitch ended over here. I'll go back a couple of stitches and go forward, And then over here I'll rejoin that other stitch line, and that'll be that. And then I'm going to flip it over and pray that I caught the back side of it as well as the front side. Okay? See you soon. I'll either be really mad or really excited. Okay. I'm not too upset. I do have one little spot where it got off the edge of this one, but otherwise it is a nice sew line. Went all the way across real well. I can totally see why, or actually no, I don't really see why it did that, other than I just didn't have the two. Again, they moved around a lot. If I was using a different leather, we wouldn't have had this issue. Oh well. Alright, so now I can fold it over and find where my locks fastener is going to go. Okay, I could fix that. I could unstitch it and redo the stitch. Honestly, this is my backpack and it's going to get used and abused like nobody's business, so I don't care. Okay, so time to put my locks fastener on here. I'm going to use a antique brass one since we're using brass hardware on everything else. But first I'm going to clip some stitches here. All right, so locks fasteners, right? So with the locks fastener, you need a 3/8 inch hole punch. I'm gonna find my center here, punch my 3/8 inch hole right there in my center, about an inch from the bottom or so. I mean, there's no real placement it has to be as long as it's centered left to right on the bag. Yeah, I've got to go dig through all my punches to find my 3/8, so I'll be right back. All right, so again, we're going to find the center there. I need my 3/8 inch hole punch, which is right chaw. I need a maul, which is right chaw. And unfortunately, the leg of the tripod is on the same table that I'm on, so you're about to feel a bounce. All right, giggity. So here we go. For anybody that's never set a locks fastener before, it's the easiest fastener in the world to use. It's also extremely secure, and they look nice too. So you unscrew the back off of it, you place it carefully in your 3/8 inch hole, you go to the back of it, you screw the back on it. Okay, and that's it. Screw it on real good and tight though, because it needs to, the back of it needs to be flush with the base of the washer. Let me grab one of those little keys that you tighten those with. This little 2-prong key here is what helps you screw that on. There we go. Guten tight. It's German because these are German. All right, now I probably should have done this before tightening that on there, but I need to find the center here also so that I have something to put it on. If this doesn't leave a good mark on the base of the bag, then I'm gonna have to take that back off because I'm an idiot. Yeah, it's not making a mark on it, unfortunately. So I'm going to take the locks back off because I'm slow. You know, I've only done this for 20 years, guys. You got to cut me some slack. It's like I tell my wife, I once thought I was wrong, but I was mistaken. She doesn't appreciate that joke at all. I'm sure there's wives out there or people in general that also understand. Nobody likes a smartass, and I am one. Okay. Alright, so we're going to kind of figure out where the flap just kind of naturally falls and looks good. In my case, it's about 3/4 of an inch above where the flap is sewn on. I'm going to center it left to right and use just about anything to just kind of mark where that should be. Okay? You can get all scientific and measure left to right between the seams and make sure that's good. Let's go ahead and do that just to see how we did. And we did fine. All right, now remember, I also have a liner inside there, so when I punch this hole, it's going to go through the fabric too. So I want to take my hand and flatten the fabric out under there and make sure that it goes, you know, so it's not all wrinkled up inside there and stuff. Put my little hole punch on there. My dog Butters is over here chewing on something, and when I did that, she jumped. Where you at, Butters? There you are. Butters, say hi. Butters. Hello, beautiful. Hello. Butters is half Shar-Pei, half Beagle. And the breed is called a Sharp Eagle. I honestly thought the guy was telling me a joke when he told me about it, but he was not, and she's beautiful, and I had to have her. So, all right, so that hole punch went through the fabric and the leather. Okay, so I need to make sure that this thing goes through both, and that it lays nice and flat like it was when I put the hole punch in it. Okay, and then I'll screw the base in just like I screwed the top of it on a while ago. And then I'll re-screw the top of it back in because now it's ready. I hope this bag looks really good on camera because it's a really nice bag, and I really like the leather we use for it. I thought it was just something random I found in the warehouse, but Doc was showing it to me and said, no, that's something we carry kind of regularly. It's called Texas Two-Step back there. So, there you go. If you're looking for this leather, it is on the website. All right, putting the back of it, or the front part back on the flap here. Screw it down tightly, and then for the first time ever, this bag will be closed. All right, and we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, folks. We're almost done here. We're going to do some shoulder straps, and we're going to call this sucker good to go. Okay? It's going to be hard to find the center until this bag breaks in. There we go. There she be, right there. It's pretty cool bag right there. I'm excited. It's going to look great with all my remote control batteries in it. It's probably what I'll be carrying around. All right. So, shoulder straps, guys. Let me go grab some stuff for that part of it, and we're gonna keep going. All right, guys, it's time to make some straps. Let me kind of zoom in on what I'm doing here. So, we need 2 parts to each strap, and then, of course, there's 2 straps, so you need to make 2 of these and 2 of the other part, okay? There's the other part. That's what goes up over your shoulder. Okay, that's all sewn together right there. Now that I've done one of them, I'll show you how I did it. I took a 7-inch piece of 1-inch strap, okay? And I just rounded both the ends of it. So I'm using a round punch. You can easily cut this. Okay, 7 inches. Alrighty. Now I didn't measure how far I backed up to do my end punch there. 5 1/4. So 5 1/4 inches from one end. I'm going to do an oblong punch. Okay, and again, you can cut this by hand if you need to. You don't have to have all these fancy tools, but over the years you will probably collect them. This is just a 1-inch oblong punch. That I have to hit twice. Alright, this is a cart buckle right here. This one's solid brass because we use brass on all the other hardware. I wrap it around the buckle, squeeze it down, and then I'm going to put me a little rivet hole right there. Okay, I'll have to take the buckle off because it's such a short, there's not enough room for the buckle to sit against the cutting board to do this. Alright, so I'm going to set one of those brass rivets in it after I knock this hole. Oop, didn't go through all the layers. Alright, so grab a rivet and a washer, put my buckle back on. You want to make sure that your buckle tongue is orientated correctly. Alright, you want your buckle tongue to be where it folds down to itself. If it were on backwards, then it would look like that right there. and it would be folded up. Okay, not good. You want it folded down. All right, so I'm going to put my rivet in here and get my washer for my rivet, and I'm going to set this rivet just like I've set every other brass or copper rivet on every other video I've ever done. Okay, put it on, take my setter and knock it down, take my clippers and cut them off. These brass rivets will really fly when you cut them, so you got to watch your eyes, and you tell anybody else that might be in the room to watch their eyes, because these suckers go everywhere. That one hit my computer over there. It's about 10 feet away. Okay, now take my ball peen hammer, use the flat side first, and then I use the ball peen side. There you go. I always rub my finger over it. If it catches my fingerprints or something, then I know that it's going to catch, you know, like the side of my shirt or something like that when I'm wearing the bag. So rub my finger over it. If it doesn't have any sharp corners or edges, it's done properly. Okay, so again, we have to do that twice. There they are. Now, the other part. Again, this is difficult because mine doesn't stick to the tape. Okay, so I have to use a bunch of clips. I actually left all my clips over at the sewing machine that I was using because, of course, I did sew this one down. All right, but this piece, we're going to take a piece of tape and put it right down the center there. And we're going to fold the sides in to the center to where it'll look like this right here. Okay, now again, I have to clip mine down because it doesn't stick with the tape. All right, so not a big deal at all. If yours does stick, that's great. If it doesn't, use clips, hold it down. But I'm gonna put a piece of double-sided tape across it, and then I'm gonna go along and fold that in and clip it down, and then when I come back, it'll be clipped down, and I'll show you what we do next to it. Okay, so I use a really wide piece of double-sided tape. If you don't have wide tape, use the narrow tape and do two strips of it, approximately a ½ inch in between them. Okay. All right. So again, I'm gonna have to, as I fold this over, I'm gonna have to clip it together, and I'm not gonna make you watch me do that. It will take me quite a while to get it all done. When I come back, you'll see what it should look like, though. All right, folks, I'm gonna have to hurry this along because my little camera's running out of battery. Okay. So I got it folded over like it ought to with the seam, you know, butted up to itself. Now I'm going to put another big wide piece of tape across that, and then I'm going to stick my my strap to it. Okay, I do want to have a rounded end on my strap, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right quick. Where's that? And I did bevel the edges of this strap before I started all that. I should have mentioned. I recently got one of Weaver's fancy little things that you can pull a strap through and bevel like all of it at once. It's a pretty cool tool, I'm not gonna lie. So anyway, that was what I played with. And then you want about 2 inches of overhang, 2 inches of overhang or so past that, because that's what's going to go inside your bag. Okay. But anyway, like I said, I've got to hurry along because this camera's about to die, and I've got to finish this video today. Y'all have waited too long. I got another one to make tomorrow. So you want about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of overhang right here. You're going to stick it to it, and then you're just going to sew down both sides of it so that it's like that. Okay? Yeah, and then you can cut it to length later. I leave them pretty long until I actually put the backpack on my back, and then, you know, if it's made for someone smaller, bigger, whatever. But anyway, what I am going to do is go ahead and do the completed one onto the backpack, so that you can watch me rivet it on and everything and see how I do that, so that we can get this video wrapped up before the battery dies. So here we go. So these are going to go inside the bag. Get this one out of the way here. Or not inside the bag, sorry. On that back yoke thing that we sewed on it earlier. Okay, right there. I'm going to put it on there just like this, with the bottom of it up when I'm looking at it this way. Shove it in there as far as I can, and then I'm going to put a rivet in, just right there, okay? Y'all have watched me do a rivet. You've seen me do it 100 times. The rivet will go from this side, and then the peened part will be on the inside of the bag. This piece right here is going to go over here on this corner. All right, that little triangle that we did, and I'm just going to make it match that folded angle that right there. Okay, and I'm going to rivet it in. And then once I get both the straps to this point, then I'll punch my holes along here to make it adjustable, and it'll hang however I want. Some people like their bag to ride higher on their back, some lower. I remember when I was a kid in high school, like if it hung out down to your knees, you were just one of the cool kids. I'm not quite that way anymore. But anyway, that's what you've got to do to finish this project. Once that's done, your bag is done. Congratulations. Another great project. Okay? But rivet this sucker in, rivet that sucker in, finish the other side, rivet those two in, punch your holes. I normally keep in mind when you're punching your adjustment holes for it, it's not like a belt. You don't need it every 3/4 of an inch or whatever. I usually put them about every 2 inches. Okay? And I only put 2 or 3 of them in there once I find my optimal, where I want to wear it on my back. Because you don't want a bunch of this hanging down off the bottom of your bag either. Okay? So, I hope that that explained it well enough. Let me show you what all that looks like on the bag that I had finished. Here it is. Okay, there's where it's riveted into the back of the bag. There's where it's riveted into the side of the bag. And then there's where my holes are for adjustments. Okay? When I wear the bag, I like it about like this right here. Okay, there's that bone right there at the base of your neck, and it's usually just a couple inches below that. But again, that's a personal preference. Everybody wears theirs a little bit different. So, I'm Aaron Heiser of Maker's Leather Supply. Thank you so much for watching the Lewis and Clark Backpack Series. This completes the project, and I hope yours turned out awesome. Have a great day.